Hello, everyone. It's Fiona here from fionamarks.com, and I am once again sipping chai with my colleague and friend from the Asheville Vedic Astrology Apprenticeship Program. I'm here with Sachin. Sachin, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hi everyone, nice to see everyone back. I hope you're enjoying this series. And I'm Sachin Sharma. I'm from Sachin Astrology, and astrology is my sadhana. It's what I am, what I do, and I hope that we bring a lot of. Uh, we all use this space to learn more about astrology and dig into this deep, profound knowledge. And I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you here. Sachin and I actually barely know each other. We just love talking about this topic. So we're doing all of our getting to know each other on camera. And we had a real connection. Last week when we spoke, we talked about, we really explored finding truth and that astrology and Vedic philosophy have these essential like rivers of truth running through them, and how do we as flawed human beings, how do we tap into that? And we looked at planets, and we had a great conversation about our imperfections and our perfections. And right at the end we started talking about meditation as being essential for the astrologer, because of that, the clarity and the clearness of the mind, allowing us to look at a chart with clarity and without all of our own preconceived ideas projecting judgments onto someone else's life, because that is not the job of an astrologer and it's not helpful to anyone. So we kind of stumbled towards astrology. And right at the end, around 48 minutes into the conversation, Sachin says to me this statement about non-cleanliness of the mind. And then at 50 minutes, he says, the importance of meditating and seeing your trash come up. And I was really struck because we haven't spoken to each other, we barely know each other. And yet, these are also experiences that I have in meditation and that I have put down in artwork, because I find art, it's that whole thing of the picture is worth 1,000 words, and meditation is something so rich, complex, simple, and nothingness. And yet, how do we ever speak about it in words? So this week with Sachin, I wanted to ask if he would indulge me while I share with him those images, and as a vehicle for us to talk about meditation, the experience, the importance of it, and any of the philosophical framework, because I find that very valuable as well. So Sachin has kindly agreed, and in which case I'm going to share the screen now. So we're going to pop over onto the side. Um, and now I'm sharing with you the Redbubble site where I load up my drawings, which are all about, um, for me, Vedic philosophy and how I've come to understand it. So maybe one of my ways of contemplating is through drawing. Um, and I have this triptych, a series of 3 drawings about meditation, which is what Sachin tapped into with this statement of watching our trash float by. But I think we have to work through them a little bit in order. So maybe if I put the first one up on screen. Um, so this is an image that I drew to share something about my experience of meditation, that when, again, last week when we spoke, Sachin talked about that in 30 minutes of meditation, there might be 29 minutes of garbage and 1 minute of pure stillness or clarity connection. And this is probably that image of that 1 minute. But if we imagine that in some ways we are at the bottom of the ocean trying to look up to the heavens, and usually the ocean can be very busy, and even the sand at the bottom of the ocean, can get churned up. But there are those moments where the water stills and we see all the way through to the sky. And I like this imagery because looking through water, everything is a little distorted. It's hard to look clearly through water. And it's easy for the smallest ripple in the water to distort the whole image or connection. And that's why it's so beautiful and so relieving when one experiences that settled ocean of the mind. And suddenly everything is clear. And that's why I have that kind of light being exchanged between the heavens and the earth.
That's so
Yes,
image.
please, Sachin. Yes.
It just perfect. It defines, I think it helps us understand Venus, what you just said. Water, whatever we look through water is a bit distorted. And no matter how calm the water is, I mean, it's still less distorted, but it's still distorted. So no matter, uh, I think it's quite profound because Venus is desire essentially on a very fundamental level, and desire not necessarily being a bad thing because it can again guided by wisdom it can lead you to you as a great master says, you use one thorn to pick out another and you let go of both.
Yeah.
So I really like that, and this image is so beautiful. It's just so profound, especially just the expression on the eye. I really like it, and the connection is so beautiful. Like this light is like all seeing, and it also reminds us of the adage of this common saying that I've hit rock bottom. You know,
Yeah.
when you finally have no other way and no other space but to look back up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can like get that connection with that thing which is above the water.
Yeah.
Water can be like the ocean of consciousness itself, and we are drowned in the ocean of consciousness and at the bottom almost, and there's something beyond and outside of the causal time ocean of consciousness, which is like this eye on top, which has this Buddha like expression, like this calmness, serenity, and the all seeing eye. And so in as you just said, like in meditation, 29 minutes in a 30 minutes of meditation, first 10 minutes is just like settling your mind, energy,
Mm,
your breath. The next 10 minutes is often just like you thinking. First 10 minutes is about you thinking about that you are meditating, and then the next 20 10 minutes is about like going through all the images and imprints in our mind of all the things that happened, and then you cleanse that, which is a very good technique in and of itself.
yeah,
If you
it's
can
helpful. Mm.
use japa, like repetition of a mantra or watching your breath or like different ways, listening to a sound,
Yeah.
and then cleansing that. And the last 10 minutes when you actually calm, within those 10 minutes also you're just a bit like in this heavy space, and there can be a moment, a minute, or even a second where you're just like, huh,
Yeah.
I there's this sense of weightlessness. And that weightlessness is that, I think, when the eye on top and the eye on the bottom gets a minor signal from each other, like one
Exactly.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's like that. That's the craving that I have. Is that connection with the eye in the sky? Is that wanting to be seen by that peace, wanting to be. It's aware that I'm in peace, aware that I'm being witnessed by peace, and not aware of any of it all at the same time. And that we for me, that's definitely a craving that I have that is satisfied by these moments of connection. But that the eye is always looking up at the sky, and the eye in the sky is always looking down at the earth. You know, like it's kind of also the abundance of opportunities that we have to connect with the eye in the sky. And yet we fill up that mind ocean with, you know, so much television and so much entertainment and so many distractions. And like you say, when you first sit down for meditation, the compulsion to entertain the mind becomes quite overwhelming. You know, the mind really is craving now some distraction, some sensory input to entertain this mind ocean. And when really the eye in the sky is looking there all the time, or the signal, it's always like the homing beacon is always sending out the, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? You know?
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly like um, an ocean and that distortion, as you said. I'm just stuck on that idea. I think it's very beautiful. It just makes that moon and sorry, the water and the Venus and that desire and passion. Venus
Yes.
brings a passion into the life, and vairagya, this passion being one of the key elements of like getting to a more stable mind, and then it's just like it distorts. But then Venus is also exalted in Pisces, which is that seeing that there will always be a little bit of this passion in my passion and passion in my dispassion, like
Yeah.
that young stuff, that working with complexity to an extent where you get basically surrendered to
Yes.
complexity, and that surrender experience is like beyond intellect, and that's when that ways of knowing part gets connected.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's have a look at some of the two other drawings that make up the series, which actually it's on my wall behind me. Like the originals are there. So this is in my home, but here it is on screen. So I also wanted a drawing to describe that experience of meditation that we have when life is traumatic,
Mhm.
when the emotions come, something unexpected, when we feel destabilized. And maybe we were having that bliss experience, you know, regularly in meditation, and then something happens with the body or with the heart, or in our lives. And so I've got here, you know, as many of those that I can think of. I've got the storm happening in the sky, and that when there's a real storm, sometimes the sky is very, very dark. But we all know as humans that even while that sky is very dark, the sun is right behind there. Like the sun is still sending megawatts, as Sachin shared with me this week, a beautiful video about the power of the sun. During the darkest storm, in the middle of the day when it's so dark, we all know the sun is still beaming. And then, so we've got the darkness of the clouds. We've got the ocean being churned up on the surface. You know, when the surface of the ocean gets really full of waves of different potencies, and then also even down in the deepest depths of the ocean, some of that bottom of the sand that had settled is churned up by the currents, and all the dirt that we were resting on that was invisible to us is now being kicked up into the water. So and therefore, and in this diagram, I don't have that shaft of light because it can be at these times of disturbance that we feel disconnected from the stillness of that shaft of light. Did you want to add anything to that, Sachin?
It's so beautiful. First of all, this evokes so much. I think anyone viewing right now uh, must go through like a little experience with the artwork itself. And yeah, I mean, at this point, this is when you need that Saturn strength. You need that moment of that whole process of hope being a tool for uh, to be able to persevere. Hope being empty in and of itself, but being utilized as a tool and not being seen as a truth or a habit, but something that is a tool.
Yep.
And, um, and I think what's important is this in this painting is even though the eye below is see the eye is more open and it looks like traumatized, it's like
Yeah.
shock,
Yeah.
calm. The eye above is still calm and is still watching you.
Yeah.
So this painting is a beautiful reminder. It's a very Venusian form of reminder to that Saturn being traumatized at the bottom, that the, you're being watched, like you're
Yeah.
being under the care of something,
Yeah.
and it's just really beautiful. Yeah.
Good. All right. So then that brings us to the third painting, which is actually where the conversation began last week, um, which is this painting. That after the storm has passed and the water is calm once again, actually the process of that trauma or that shock, it kicks up from what had settled in the surface of the sand, it kicks it up into the ocean. And so you said to me last week, you see your trash come up, and this is the drawing that I had made. I don't know whether this is 8 years ago or some long time ago before we met, and that this can be distressing. So it can be distressing to be in the storm, but it can be distressing after the storm because we see in the water the impurities, and that the mind has a habit to attach itself to these impurities, and that's very disturbing for the mind.
What just comes to me is that eye is the attention,
Yeah.
mind is that ocean, and the attention is the sun, and the
Yes.
mind is the ocean. So as long as we keep using our attention towards the mind, we're gonna focus on uh, the trash and the
Yep.
water, and the ocean and the
Yep.
storm. And the trash attention is we can imagine this attention as like a beam of light, a sharp.
Yes. Yes.
The trash sort of like blocks the beam from reaching the top.
Yep.
When we that beam goes and it hits the bottle, like hits like a
Yep.
deep, like okay, I think I don't want my friend to be successful, and this is something, a shadow like this is playing out, and you're like, wow, am I a bad person? Am I a bad person for feeling this way? And that's when you have to be like detached. That's when
Yes.
you need to be like, it's 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 just trash. It's not truth, you know.
Yeah.
From trash to truth. That's the journey we need to take. And so, uh,
Yeah.
so intention is very powerful, and I think the Horus, the eye of the Horus, uh, in this ancient Egyptian
Yes.
symbolic symbology, symbolism, is about attention. Sut, we call it in one of these traditions. So meaning this be a bit capacity to like focus on one thing, and at that moment nothing else is there. So I mean, right now a lot of things are happening. There are a lot of resistances in the body, pains, but we're not paying attention to it. There is birds chirping. Now I can hear them when I talk, but when I'm talking to you, I can't hear them.
Yep.
not chopping. So that attention is key. Like where attention goes, energy flows is overused for a reason. It's useful and it's true. And that's when we need sun's attention to be guided by all the other planets. So when the sun can anchor its vision to the eye on top, that there is a top and there is a place which is better than this place, and that can be anything. It can be a better job, not always the highest realm or like something like that, but just a better job. And you're stuck in this job, and you're at the bottom, and like I hate my job, and your job is just bringing all these triggers. So this one piece of trash can be how a boss is triggering an anger pattern, or like a pattern with our authority figures, so some father issue. And then those red flags become those key areas from where light can enter. And when we clean this trash, it's effortless. The light will shine through.
Yep.
So a lot of the light work is about shadows, and this trash is those shadows. But I can't emphasize enough on the fact that how powerful human attention is, and how
Mm,
you say, we waste time on TV, television. And if you're working on manifestation and your power of belief and your power for dharan shakti, which we call it dharana, which is dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So dharana being the capacity to believe that it's happening, it's there, I can do it. And then you watch TV, you can start manifesting trash, because now you're a powerful being. So people started watching, people who watch a lot of dramas, the movie, the actors in the dramas become the archetypes. And then we start playing out those archetypes in our lives. And then we start reenacting that drama in with our partner, because that's what people do in movies with their partners in relationships. So having the right archetypes, having the right role models, having the right people, the right imprints in the mind is also so important. And this when we remove this trash, it sort of needs to be replaced by gems, or you'll also find gems. So that's the second really important thing, that it's not always trash after the storm. I mean, most of the astrologers find astrology after a storm or during a storm, and that's the gemstone that they find. But they also find their incapacity to do astrology properly because of this other shadow trash that they have, and that they work out the shadow trash so that they can polish the gemstone of astrology more, to like a more beautiful gemstone. So there's just so much to this painting.
yeah, exactly. That's what I find, that it's the contemplation in the artwork that shares the thousand words. And I love how, yeah, we don't know each other. We've barely spoken about anything. And, we're having a rich and deep conversation about this experience. So that's fantastic. I think one of the things that was important to me in making this painting was to be equally detached from the trash and the treasure, to concentrate on clearing, like allowing all of that to settle once again without giving it attention. I could totally agree with you that attention is like the beam of light. And I really thought about with this drawing to disperse the light between these objects, but I was worried that would be too distracting, confusing. But I think that's what happens, is that the attention gets drawn by all of these shiny objects that are wonderful, and all of these it wants to be repel itself away from the objects that are not attractive. And there's something so powerful when we realize that we can let go of both the gems and the trash, that everything that we're experiencing is perfect for the moment of time that we're in right now. So allow the water to be whatever it is, with full of whatever it is. You can watch those things go by, because the main game is reconnecting to that eye in the sky.
Yeah.
And anything less than that is a distraction, either being the person with the most beautiful gem or the person with the most rubbish of any conscious being. Either of those is a distraction that takes us away from the connection with the eye in the sky.
Yeah. And that there can be also be the idea of transcending the trash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's that's really beautiful. But we can get so stuck in the trash. Um, it's important, and some of it needs to be dealt with, but some of it is just sat on. It's just leave it alone.
Yep.
And some of the gemstones are really good opportunities, really good possibilities, but some of the gemstones are just you can't have every gemstone. So you just focus on the gemstones which are meaningful and important to you, and you just focus on the trash that is the real blockage between you and what you want to manifest, or manifest. The word manifest being overused in the new age communities. Uh,
Mm,
I just want to say it once. But the uh, the attention then can just transcend the rest of the trash and rest of the gemstones and make life happen in a way that brings well-being to yourself
yeah.
with everyone around. And
I
that
know, it's so simple, right? Wonderful. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. Great to have you back on the main screen. Thank you for working through that with me, Sachin, and how lovely to share with you a connection, a visual language that we've never talked about, and yet it
yeah,
reveals meaning. So yeah, really lovely. So maybe the takeaways from this conversation is to just once again highlight the importance of meditation, because ideally, as an astrologer, when you're looking at a chart, you want to be like that first painting in a place where the water is clear, and that when you look at the chart, we can see those indicators and the dynamics that are playing out without heat and without cold. We're just neutral, and as best as possible with compassion, we communicate that to the person whose chart it is, from a place of stillness and peace, rather than from bouncing around in our own push me pull me experience of the mind.
yeah, yeah, very important. That's that. Dharana is something that I've been thinking a lot about these days. It's a new word that has come into my awareness. I've heard it a lot of times, but I never really thought about it. And dharana meaning uh, focusing your mental energy, preserving it, focusing it, and directing it. And we try to meditate before we have concentration. Dharana usually is translated into concentration. So we
Mm,
try to meditate before we have the capacity to. So initially, our meditations are more about concentrating ourselves into this present moment, uh,
yes.
and concentrating our mind into an intention that I want to sit here and I can sit and I can do this. And this idea of allow yourself to be in this space. You have to give permission to yourself to be here. That's all of that is part of that dharana part. And I think that can take up to 3 years initially. 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. And you can allow yourself as much time as much you want to like just ground yourself into this belief that these things are possible even if I'm working a corporate job or if I work a non-spiritual job, because we think if you're not a yoga instructor you're not allowed to get enlightened or something like that. A belief like that can come up. Something that is, I think, floating around in the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
Beliefs like this, like if I need to, I think, read a lot about spirituality once I can practice it, So the intellect interfering with just this sitting with your heart center and just feeling into this present moment, uh, that can really interfere. And the dharana, just embodying dharana is also embodying the thisness.
Yes.
I okay, this is what it is, and then concentrating and then working towards things. So not fluctuating, being like, okay, so procrastination is a problem for dharana, and I I feel every person. I think this Patanjali's Yoga Sutras,
Yeah.
Swami Vivekananda, or anyone else that I think Swami Vivekananda is quite a nice authority on it, but anyone else also, these are like really some of the key sutras. They're just a lot of the Western psychology is like this complicated. So
I know. It's funny because I've got the screen to share. I'll show you another image because obviously I was really inspired by the Yoga Sutras. I think they're just so clear. Like you said, it's all of that complexity, but trimmed down to the essential and put in a logical order. And this is my drawing of the yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga. And we have here at the bottom, the yamas is this leg and the niyamas. And then on the mat, each of the yamas, and here on the mat, each of the niyamas.
that's so interesting. Cleanliness being Soucha.
Yeah.
That's so it's all there, and it's a very beautiful painting. First of all, love it.
And then the asanas, the pranayama, the pratyahara. But then here, what we've been talking about is this process of focusing the mind.
Oh, I love this painting. I really,
Yeah.
really love it.
Yeah, and maybe this is something that we talk about another time, but when I speak to people, I teach meditation, I host meditation 3 times a week. I talk about this focusing of the mind is like threading the needle. One has to, in order to sew, in order to create clothing or fabric for the home, there are these 2 really distinct things you need to do. And one of them is thread the needle. You cannot sew 2 pieces of fabric together unless you can thread a needle. But then to sew, to actually connect the fabric together is a completely different experience. But you must thread the needle first, and then the flow of sewing happens. So this step of concentration, of threading the needle, which is bringing the mind to the present moment through mantra, through breath, through awareness of a sensation in the body, whatever. There are many ways to focus the mind. But when we can focus the mind enough to thread the needle, then the experience of meditation is this extremely expansive and actually not focused. So it's a very beautiful experience of the mind, or experience of being awareness, that one has to thread the needle and then.
So beautiful. That's I love this painting because the mat itself is the 8 niyamas.
Yeah, we can't fit it all on one screen here, but you get the gist.
Yeah, it's so like there, uh, Satya, non-lying to yourself, so self-sabotage
Yeah.
or sabotage and self-sabotage. Ahimsa, non-harming to the self and others, and all kinds of complex ways. You can read all kinds of Western articulations about it, but it's as simple as this. And then there's Asteya, non-stealing.
Yeah.
That's again deceit. It and we are deceitful in ways. We are so good at deceit that we don't even know that we can be deceitful. Uh, so that, and then
This is Brahmacharya. It's
Brahmacharya
Yeah.
is, I
I put
mean,
non-dissipating.
non-dispassionate, non-dis.
Dissipating, because I think it's hard to explain to Westerners Brahmacharya because it's easy to, sometimes it's translated as not wasting one's sexual energy, but it's also really not wasting one's creative energy.
That's a
And
funny
that,
way to put it, actually.
yeah, so that's why I put non-dissipating. And Sachin and I are going to be speaking about Saturn and the Yama, that Saturn is, that it's in the harnessing. So the word that I used to connect all of these limbs of yoga was the harnessing. And Brahmacharya is a little bit like harnessing that creative energy. That is a gift
I
of,
think they're much softer, much more honest, and articulation which doesn't create a lot of resistances for our passionate minds. I think
yeah,
that's very profound. And again, you see here that the mat Yama becomes Saturn, and that becomes the foundation. And
yeah,
even in the Samudra Manthan story, with the churning of ocean of consciousness, the Kurma avatar of Saturn becomes the foundation for the churning of the ocean. Because whenever they used to churn, it used to fall off. And they were like,
yes,
Vishnu became Saturn, Urma Avatar, and be like, this is what the stable ground for all of your churning. So
yeah,
Saturn becomes such a like foundational planet. I mean, uh, you have recently in Delhi we had a strike. All the Saturn in Delhi went on a strike, and they started throwing all. They stopped picking the garbage,
yes,
and it was horrible. It was really bad. There were traffic jams because of garbage on the road, and
yeah.
basically life stops working if Saturn. So people really need to stop fearing Saturn, embody it, embrace it. Even in India, there's a lot of fear about Saturn. At least in the West, we don't have preconceived notions about Saturn, and people are not working on it. That's a
But
different.
we have the same, we have a blindness to Saturn. Like a few things come to mind is the way that we like propel our cars with a fuel that the waste of that fuel is
Mm,
toxic to breathe. And it's
mm,
toxic to all living organisms on the planet. But we turn a blind eye to it. And we all get in the car or the bus or the train or wherever, knowing that the waste, the Saturn of this is not being dealt with. Like
yeah.
no one is being dealt with it. And the other thing that comes to mind is Bill Gates, who I know just launched a book about environmentalism. But previous to that, since he left Microsoft, he's been really working on sanitation as what can his philanthropy do for sanitation. And someone was sharing that philanthropists don't want to invest in sanitation. Like that's not what you want to be, like I'm the greatest philanthropist because I created a toilet that, whatever. We don't, I think, although what you're saying, we don't, in the West, we don't have like an archetypal fear of some Saturnine character, but we have a blindness, a cultural agreed turn a blind eye to waste. We just don't take responsibility for the waste. Like, it's, and it exists. We see it, it's there, it's real, but we just all agree to not. I remember coming into the body, like being a child and being, perplexed about the waste disposal of the society. I remember just being really like, what? And we used to have that. Now you can't really do it, but we used to have dumps where, as a family, you would take your stuff and drive it somewhere and tip it onto a heap of rubbish. And I remember as a child just being like, I don't understand this. I can't see how that taking rubbish to a dump works. That doesn't seem to have transformed this situation in any way. So,
No, no, it's true. It's true. I might be global. It might not be an East and West thing.
yeah,
In East, it's just so out there. In
yeah,
India, especially, the trash problem is really big.
yeah,
very, very big, and people are really spreading the awareness. A lot of good work that is being done, but there's this entire class, not class, but there's this entire kind of mentality which is not dealing with their Saturn clearly. In a way, they're not aware of it. But coming back to the foundation, cleanliness, and these Saturnine things being, so you see, everything is restrained.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and the interesting part is it feels like restraint to an unruly mind, and to a mind with some insight and understanding. It's the most natural way of doing things. Like as you said, it was so like obvious to me that you're not supposed to do that. I mean, you're not supposed to eat 1 kilo of cake. No, but the person needs like a yama, a niyama, and stuff like that to make sense of life. Okay, you're not supposed to overeat.
Yeah.
Moderation is important. But if you really have, if you don't live in a murchit meaning sleepy state,
Yep.
you're conscious. You just it's common sense. I mean, why would I throw my trash on the road?
Yep.
Become conscious. No one needs to tell you these things, and no, you don't need to read a book about it. Satya, you don't need to read a book about why truth is important. If you're an unconscious person, you need to wake up, and some words need to shake you. Something needs to crack, and light needs to be brought out. Ahimsa, which is so natural, but for the ego, it's not. I mean, we don't see it. We don't see the violence that we do in our words by telling people how they should be. We don't see the violence in our actions on a day-to-day basis. We don't see the violence, intellectual violence that we do in the academic field, and
Yep.
nothing comes out of it. The physical violence, intellectual violence, wanting to be right. It's a very egoic thing. All ego. Ego. I've been so stuck with this idea, and I'm enjoying being stuck with this idea because it feels so true that ego is like a little child,
Yep.
and it's just, for example, with Asteya, which is non-stealing. It's so
Mm.
obvious. Why would I take your thing?
Yep.
I mean, I'm playing games now uh, with life. Yeah, with not dissipating your energy. Yeah, I mean, life is energy, and
Yep.
life life is less about anything else but the feeling of being alive and the aliveness, and that comes through energy. Then Aparigraha, and I think these become the ideals for an astrologer. So I think Samkhya philosophy and Patanjali Yoga Sutras can become like the foundations upon which all of Jyotisha is constructed.
Mm.
And anyone who's struggling with these, Santosha, which is contentment, you
Yep.
know, and Satosha then brings us to the idea of being really okay with whatever you have. And it's that simple. I mean, and then when we are like, but I can't. Then we know we need to do some digging. We need to find out what's not bringing that santosh. Then it says tapas.
Yes.
Tapas meaning working out, like working yourself out, mentally, physically. Like you go through like a heat. You generate this heat in your action which purifies you in some way. You push the limit of yourself in some way, which creates this, which breaks a belief, breaks a barrier. All of this is so psychological. Freud overcomplicated it, in my opinion, and his attention couldn't leave a certain chakra. Say his attention couldn't go beyond the lowest chakra in the body, and the work he did with that one chakra is so honest because he was so dishonest in wanting to fight a demon. He became that demon. So
Yeah.
you know he was really into the lowest chakra because he was really struggling with that chakra. He was really like misusing that chakra, abusing it to understand it, and he sacrificed his life doing it. And it doesn't. I mean, as an academic, I would say, wow, he was amazing. But as a Eastern, I wouldn't say Eastern, but as just a Jyotishi or a yog, someone who understands Lajdatari Avasthas and karma, I would say Freud's an idiot. And that's a big statement to make these days. Some of, yeah, and then we have Svadyaya, study.
Yep.
In study is so beautiful, and studying not just books, but that's what we think. We think of a study table and books. Studying a river, sitting next to a river, just watching that river.
Yeah.
Studying the birds, like their chirping patterns and their eating patterns, and you're like, wow, these birds dance before they mate. These birds hate each other. These birds stop talking to each other after mating. They never meet each other, and you're like, wow, this is really complex psychology happening within the birds. There you can study, and then we have the most
Surrender. Yeah,
important
exactly.
ever, like the most important thing. And anyone who wants to understand this one, this is the only honest book in this world, in my personal opinion, that really explores surrender truly. From a He's a clinical psychologist who got enlightened. Master David R. Hawkins, I would say. And imagine, like, beautiful, you see here complex psychology being laid out on a mat for
On a
you.
mat.
and
Exactly.
and here we have the legs which are intertwining, the
Yep.
yamas and niyamas intertwining. And then
Yep.
we have the asana, which is the person sitting itself in a certain position.
Yep. It's
And
the stance. And I really liked like linking that to the pelvis, it's that
Mhm.
pelvis is so core to our sense of groundedness and the way that our stance
and
to life and to the planet. So yep, asanas, pelvis. Yep.
asana being pelvis, and asana part being Scorpio and Sagittarius, which become Scorpio being like a very it's called the Randra Bhava, Randra Sthana, eighth house. Randra meaning the cavity, and is the most sensitive part, ready to break at any moment. So I mean that part, asana becomes like asana meaning not just hatha yoga asanas and stuff like that, but asanas meaning any stance that you take, any form that you take in life. Asana uh, being aware of your movement of your body
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and
every
I use with each of these, I use this word harness because I think it connects with the
asana.
word yoga. And for the yamas, it's like harness your urges, those egoic urges that we were talking about of, whatever, being competitive or stealing or whatever it is. If you can harness your urges, and then if you can harness your habits, which is the niyamas, if you can harness this habitual behavior to be life fulfilling, then it will power itself. And for asanas, I put harnessing your physicality because when one owns one's physicality and has dominion over it, which yoga helps us to do, the asanas in yoga helps us to explore where is the tightness in the body, where's the ease in the body. It keeps our body supple for the length of life that allows us to experience the karma that we can let go of while we're conscious. So the more that we can be in the body, the longer we can be healthy in the body, the more chance that we have to let go and resolve karma, which is what we came here to do. So harnessing your physicality. And then the green central section of our diaphragm and lungs pranayama, harnessing the breath.
breath, learning just how to breathe.
Yeah,
What we don't even know how to breathe.
I know. We don't know how to sit and we don't know how to breathe. I know, I know, I know.
And then we have pratyahara, which
Harness,
is
harness your senses.
senses.
So
So
I,
not seeing, harnessing your senses, meaning harnessing your becoming aware, conscious, and using it as tools rather than you us like struggling and wrestling with them.
Yeah, being a slave to our senses. This is Pratyahara is reminding you that you are you're in control of your senses, and Pratyahara means withdrawing. So it's a practice of taking the mind that has spread itself out into the senses. Because I own my mind, I can choose. And when you realize you're the chooser of your senses, this is the empowerment that comes from this. And I was trying here, all this blue area of Pratyahara. I think, the hands, our sense of touch, and the face has that hearing, the sight, the smell, the taste. So trying to keep all of those five senses inside that blue part of the diagram of the body.
Very sweet. That's thoughtful. And then we see here Dharana. I think all of it somehow starts by us thinking about all of these things.
Yeah.
Dharana being like maybe the starting point where you're like, okay, what are these yamas and niyamas? And can I do it? And you start from that space and then it extends to every other place where you're like, okay, pratyahara, oh, maybe I need to, it's more like a top down.
Mm,
Then you're like, okay, I need a map
interesting,
now. And then
isn't
you're
it?
like, how do I figure out my map? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe it has only three of these things. My map has one of these things. Or my mat is really dirty. And then you clean, you get it washed. And then we have Dhyana and
Yeah.
Samadhi. I think all Dhyana and Samadhi takes care of itself in its
Yeah.
own way,
Yeah.
not to be forced, not to be defined too much.
Exactly. And those were the ones that I didn't use the word harness for. So with Dhyana, I put, harnessing the attention. Like if one can realize that I'm in charge of my attention, it's very empowering. But then for Dhyana and Samadhi, I put be in the flow and be the flow. Seems to me to maybe be a linguistic way of saying that. But I agree with you. These take care of themselves, and they're certainly not about harnessing anymore.
Beautiful.
They
Love
flow.
it.
They
Yeah,
flow. Yeah.
love it. So for everyone, like I think just spending time repeatedly, you just open these sutras here and you just go through them randomly and just connecting yourself to the book and being like, okay, what is this? I mean, this is quite a thin book, simple words, but so profound. And one book opens another. So wherever you get stuck, and then you're like, okay, I really want to explore this part. It talks about this thing, but there's not enough information. This book will open. It's like a very good uh, guide which will lead you to the right spot which you need to explore and come back to this. It's like a map, like
Yep.
because sometimes we have it in us, we're ready in some ways, but we don't know a systematic method, so it's just there. Where do I start? And what is the formula? So this is like the formula.
That is a great book of formula. It's very systematic and very simply building one thing on another thing. So yeah, it's a revelation. It's a great place to start. I think of them as being, they're a bit holographic like that. You start with one piece and it's got everything in it. If you look into it, the whole thing is there. So you can start anywhere there and it will lead you. Sachin, here we are, sipping chai, talking about the important things. Yeah, I know. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's great to spend time with you. Thanks so much for it's been a day really indulging my imagery out into sharing it with your perception. So thank you for going on a journey with me. And I look forward to whatever it is that we speak about next time we get together.
Thank you so much,
Yeah. Okay. Bye, Sachin, and bye, everybody.
everyone.
Bye.